played out by the devil, who we would call Satan. And it was very much an appeal, because that's what Pennywise did, and it was kids, and it was appealing to the child with like that. He appealed to what they wanted every time. He used their fear, or he used something that they want to draw them in. All right, everybody, welcome back to the WatchWell Podcast. We are back with another movie review, our latest episode. My name is Parker, and this is my co-host, Nick. Nick? Can we get a... How was your week?
Was that... I couldn't tell... What was that? I can't even...
It was a drum roll.
What that was.
Yeah.
Oh.
The drum roll.
It comes through as static on my end. I hope it sounds better on everyone else's end, but...
It sounded great in my headphones.
Yeah. My week was fine.
Fine.
Which is now... not officially like for sale or anything, but is on a t-shirt. So
it is on a t-shirt. That is true. I'm waiting for mine.
Yeah.
And then eventually we'll put it in our shop when I get that figured out, because we keep having issues with that.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating. But you know what? Every wrong thing I do is one step closer to it being completed.
That's the way things work, right?
That's the way things work. So awesome. So movie review. We haven't done one in a while.
Yeah.
And
what was the last one we did?
Oh, Mario. No.
Yeah, that's right.
Is it
Mario? Mario was the last movie review we did. Yeah.
I think it was Mario.
Yep.
Right. And I also want to shout out all of our new subscribers. We've gotten a lot of new subscribers here recently, like 10 in the last day, 11 in the last day from recording. And I want to welcome them. So if you're a new subscriber and you're watching us for the first time, welcome. Again, we're the WatchWell Podcast. And if you don't know, if you haven't really gotten around to watching some of our older content explaining who we are or anything, I just wanted to let you know that we are the WatchWell Podcast. And what we usually do is we watch a movie and then we talk about it. And when we talk about the movie, it's always through the lens of the Bible. And we use the movie as almost like a practice, situational practice, in order to pull out of the movie biblical teachings and biblical theology in order to apply it to our lives, combat and discuss worldview with the Bible from an apologetic standpoint. So that's what we want to do. We always want to get better. Nick and I, we both don't have it all figured out. But we wanted to develop or grow a community of people that wanted to improve their apologetic and biblical knowledge. And this is our fun way of doing it. So again, welcome. And like, subscribe, do the YouTube thing. It's all free. Follow, share. And, we would like to get to more people so that we can, help spread God's word and the truth of the gospel to everyone. So all of that being said, the movie that we are reviewing today is the movie It.
Yes, sir.
It is. It.
Yeah. Do you think that's would that be controversial for Christians to be reviewing the movie It?
I don't know.
What do you think?
But
is that like...
I will say that we talked a little bit about this. We talked a little bit about this in our live stream. We do our live streams every week on Thursdays at 8 p.m. And we don't really have any plans on changing that quite yet officially. But Thursdays, 8 p.m., we are live on Facebook and YouTube, and we talk about more topical stuff. Sometimes it's fun movie stuff. But you brought up, kind of the horror genre, and if it's okay for Christians to be talking about that and the controversy maybe surrounding that. And we have a live stream that we talked about yoga and horror films and briefly like occult kind of stuff, with Halloween and the history of Halloween with Christians. And we were kind of both shocked with what we found. So if you guys are interested in any of that, go check that live stream out. It's available on YouTube and Facebook. So,
and you talked about how you try to avoid horror movies, and then you listed 15 horror movies.
That's exactly right. You're right. Yeah. I that's exactly what I said. So, yeah. And then you also talked about some of your church friends who absolutely love horror movies.
Yeah. Yeah.
and actually made a
mhm.
comment, I think, that they wished we did more horror films.
And then
They would have more
they would
stuff to
actually
watch.
listen to our podcast if
Yeah,
we did
if.
some horror movies. Yeah.
Yeah, well,
Yep.
here you go.
Here's
It.
it. Yeah. Here we go. Here
The
it is.
movie was,
Number one.
it came out in 2017. Rotten Tomato score, 86.
Yeah. So that's critics.
Critics
86
and
critics.
86 critics and 84 audience. And it's got an IMDb rating of 7.3 out of 10. The box office pulled in $327.5 million. It is an R-rated movie.
Yeah, which makes, I think that was, if I'm not mistaken, either number 1 or number 2 ever for horror movies at the box office.
Oh, interesting. I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
Cool.
So this is up there.
Okay, so back to your original question. Do you think it's controversial for Christians to watch this movie? What'd you have in mind? Can you give me some more context?
Well, I mean, same kind of thing we talked about on that live stream. Anything, especially now in the world in general, even, but anything can be controversial. Like we could make this could be controversial on multiple levels, because not only is it a horror movie about this haunting supernatural demon-like presence, but it's also a rated R movie with a ton of violence and blood and things like that in it. So, I mean, on multiple levels, I feel like this could be controversial. So you got the horror, you got the gore, you got the kind of, they never call it a demon, but you know, it's kind of like that haunting presence kind of thing where, you know, you could interpret it that way. So, I mean, I think it's just on multiple levels, it could be considered controversial. So maybe not, I mean, not among everybody, but I think there are those that would see it that way.
Yeah, I mean, I think it also goes back to like the rating, because, well, like normally we do like kind of our, I'm blanking on what it's called, the
plugged in movie.
Yeah, that stuff. And then we kind of talk about our rating. And I think this one probably deserves a rated R, but it's not like an RR rated movie. Like I was thinking, what I mean is I was thinking that it was going to be like way more scary. Like I didn't even really think it was a scary movie.
And that's all. I was thinking about that question separately too. So it's rated R. It's got a ton of gore and all of that stuff. It absolutely should be rated R. But then my next question, which you already answered, was it even scary?
It wasn't, not at all.
Yeah, I didn't think so either. I didn't think it was scary at all. So it, like the
I was actually very shocked.
Horror, as far as horror goes, I could see why people, which I've never read the book, but I could see why people love the book if this is accurate. Because the second you put on screen, like if I'm reading a book, then everything that's happening in the movie is something I'm seeing in my head. I'm creating those images, right? And it's going to be a lot more scary in my head just from that I'm drawing from a piece of text and a description than it's going to be when I actually see it on screen. So I feel like that's pretty obvious with this movie.
Yeah, no, I agree with that for sure. Definitely didn't think it was that scary. Definitely agree with you. It should absolutely be rated R. What about age? So in terms of age, I guess this is where I think the conflict in watching this movie from a Christian perspective maybe come into play when you talk about age of when you watch a movie like this. And you let Liam watch it.
Yeah, he watched it.
It
was kind of his idea.
It was absolutely his idea. What is he, 16? No, he's not 16. 15.
He's 15. Yeah.
So
younger than that, not at all. I would
agree.
Probably
I would
not.
agree.
Yeah.
Definitely not 10. No way.
Yeah.
Should you have watched it first before? So as parents and Christian parents, should we watch movies and filter the content? And where does that line, I don't always, I mean, I have a 3-year-old and I don't always watch a movie before. Now there are some movies where it kind of makes me think, oh, maybe I should, show some discernment here and watch this before I let my 3-year-old watch it. Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm not also letting my 3-year-old watch it.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying that in terms of watching movies, where do we draw the line for, okay, we need to screen this and then say yes or no because we know the content, or let's just, risk it for the biscuit and let them watch it. And
well,
I'm kind of
long time ago, I used, I looked up the parent guide for it. So I was pretty comfortable already knowing what was in it, or at least what was included in that. And if anything was missed, then I, maybe I should have watched it, but beforehand. But so that's typically what I do is before I let either kid, or before I'm like, we're going to watch this movie together, I generally go through the IMDb parent guide, plugged in movie reviews, Common Sense Media, and look at what they say about the content that's contained in it. And I think probably the most helpful thing is the IMDb parent guide, because they will actually break everything down into categories and describe to you the scenes that fit those categories.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't even have to go watch it. So
right,
if there's nudity in a movie, a nudity in a movie, I can know that in advance and see what they mean. Is it like a dead body on a gurney that's nude, or is it like sexually graphic scene? So I kind of use that as a guide, or at least a place to start. And so with this movie, it's just cussing and gore, really. Right. And the gore is not even really that much most of the movie. There's a few scenes where it's really, really prominent and really, really bloody. But for most of it, it's not. It's really just about some friends.
Right.
Mostly. So yeah, I didn't see a problem with him watching this at 15. But I also obviously know him very well. Right. So that always comes down to like your parenting style, your actual kid, how mature are they? What can they handle? Because he agreed, he said it wasn't scary. And maybe he's just posturing, trying to be courageous and tough, but I doubt it. I doubt that's the case, but he didn't think it was very scary, except for the opening scene, is what he said, with Georgie. So he thought.
But I think, to his defense, I think that opening scene, which wasn't scary. It wasn't scary, but I think it could be scary because you don't know what's about to come.
Yeah.
And I think that plays into a lot of manipulating your emotions, and that's what movies do. They use sound effects and music, and
it's something awful is going to happen, but you have no idea what it is.
Yeah. And I think that adds to part of it too. So that suspense is definitely helping. Okay, so that's kind of, we ripped off the introduction of the movie. Did you like it?
Yeah, I liked it. If I can just be general, I liked it. I can nitpick anything. I can nitpick absolutely any movie that I watch, but yeah, I liked it. So we're talking about chapter 1 and chapter 2. Chapter 1 and chapter 2, right? I did not like chapter 2.
Okay.
I didn't like it. But I did enjoy it chapter 1, which was 2017. So with the one released in 2017. Chapter 2 was released 2 years later, I think, in 2019. 27 years later with all the same characters, just now they're grown-ups, they're adults. So, and it's really basically, in my opinion, just a rehash of the first one, just with adults instead of kids. And the acting wasn't as good in the second one as in the first one. So
if I'm being completely honest, I thought it was kind of boring.
Really?
Yeah. It was kind of whatever. I thought it was boring, kind of unbelievable. It really wasn't that scary. It wasn't. So like when it comes to horror films, for me, obviously we're Christians and we believe in spiritual warfare and demons and angels and, what the Bible teaches, what it teaches us there are in the, I guess, the metaphysical, right? So I would say for me, in order to like something, you need to ride the line of not real enough, but not too fake either. Mm-hmm. And I think this spilled over that line into
way too fake.
And it was just, it came off as just, Yeah,
I think I agree with you. And I think that would be one of my nitpicks. But did I enjoy watching? I kind of still enjoyed watching it though. So it definitely,
But I don't know if I can say that I enjoy watching it because of the movie more so than I enjoyed watching it with you and Liam.
right.
So
Yeah.
that's part of it too, because this
Yeah.
is the first movie that we've watched for the podcast together. And
It is, isn't it?
yeah, so I don't know if I can truly say that. Like, I would have had to have watched it by myself and had that comparison in order to be able to say, I watched this movie and I really just enjoyed the movie. But I don't
Yeah.
think I did. I think it was more the experience of watching it with you guys that added to the movie.
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe that's why I hated chapter 2, because I was watching it alone. And it wasn't at all scary. To me, like the cheese factor and the fake factor was all like the volume was turned as far up as it could go on what was cheesy and fake in the second one. So I'm with you. But don't forget, it should have been the second movie that we watched together. And I guess the company wasn't good enough for the first one, because we tried to watch Signs and you were out within 10 minutes the night before.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I will say that is true. I did fall asleep during Signs.
But not because you were bored. You were like, you didn't even have time to get bored.
No, I didn't. No, I was actually kind of into it because I was like, I've never seen this movie. Which is crazy to think that I've never seen this movie. And I was like really pumped. And then they were like going through the cornfield, and then I woke up and I was like, nope, I'm going to bed.
And the movie was over.
It was over. So
yeah.
Okay. Back to it. So the key characters. We've got the Losers Club. Okay. Bill, Beverly, Ben, Richie, Mike, Eddie, Stanley. And then later we see Henry, Patrick, and some adults, parents, right?
Yeah. Lots of adults, teachers. I think there's a store owner. There's, just lots of adults that don't really serve any purpose other than to be background, like to know that they're in existence.
Right. Pennywise, a supernatural creature that haunts the town of Derry every 27 years.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Anything else you want to talk about there, Nick?
What did you think of... Actually, two things. Before I jump into asking about the opening scene, which we've talked about a little bit, but just generally, what do you think of Pennywise as a character, as like a creature versus... Because I had never read the books. So this movie was the first exposure I've ever had to the book or anything to do with the story It.
Yeah, I've never read the book.
I had always assumed that the story of It was a guy who dressed as a clown and was like a serial killer. Like, so I had no idea what the movie or books or anything was about other than there's a clown involved. So I was actually kind of caught off guard a little bit with Pennywise being a supernatural creature and this haunting presence that really, I think they straight up said only the kids can really see, right? The parents don't see him.
And that was another thing. I want to go back real quick because I just had this thought. I don't mean to cut you off, but that was another reason why I didn't really like the movies, because they didn't really explain, at least in the first movie, they didn't really explain. I don't think that they did justice explaining where Pennywise came from.
Yeah, they don't. There isn't. From what I remember, there wasn't an origin.
And I think it was really hard to relate to the bad guy in terms of understanding, because normally, and I'm just speaking general here. Normally, you get a backstory of why the bad guy is bad.
Yeah.
And that adds something to the story. I didn't, it was just violence for violence. And maybe that adds into our later breakdown as something that we observe. But it's really hard to, it just doesn't seem like it's full circle. Like it doesn't seem complete. The movie didn't seem complete without that. With leaving that out is what I should say. So I would just say that. But you can go back. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I just had that thought, kind of like an epiphany.
Yeah. I mean, just what were your expectations of Pennywise, the character, the clown? Like, did you know going in that he was more of a supernatural creature, supernatural being than he was just a clown?
No, I had no, I didn't even, I had I thought less than you did.
Yeah.
I didn't even put any thought into it. Like, I didn't even think that it was just a guy that was dressing up, luring kids, whatever. I didn't think any of that. I completely went into it blind. So I can't even say I had a presupposition in the movie or a preconceived idea, nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. So, I mean, for me, just the fact that he's a monster makes it less scary right off the bat. Like,
yeah,
just knowing that, like, makes it less scary, because I typically find movies that, even if they're unrealistic, there's a little bit of like, if just a couple things were different, this could really happen. Right? Like, there's a movie called, and I don't recommend it because it's very, well, I don't know if I recommend it. I'm just going to let it hang out there and people can make their own decision. But the movie The Strangers.
Okay.
Right? It's about some random strangers terrorizing this couple who's at a vacation home. And it's terrifying because you could see somebody being disturbed enough to actually do this. And so, like, when I sit there and watch that movie, I actually do feel a sense of dread and a sense of terror and horror, because I'm thinking, man, this isn't far off from just somebody easily being able to do this to somebody else. But then with this, when I thought it was like a serial killer clown, basically, that idea, okay, maybe that could be scary. But as soon as it becomes supernatural, I don't know if you'd call it realism or logical mind or whatever you would call it, just kicks in, and it's like every time something is supposed to cause you to jump or be fearful, it's like, well, it's not real.
Well, I think I think I agree with you, because it kind of follows the same line of thinking as, like, super cheesy, scary things become humorous.
Mm-hmm.
And this is kind of in the realm of what that was for me. It was like so far out there that I was like, it's kind of funny.
Mm-hmm. Because he also shapeshifts, like he changes form, right?
Yeah, it's like so far out there.
Which maybe that connects to what we were talking about, like right at the very beginning. Maybe that's more of like a demonic thing,
Maybe.
So, but they never come out and make it seem like that or say that. I don't think that I remember. So,
but I do think so. I originally took your question, what were your original thoughts of Pennywise?
Mm-hmm.
Before you prefaced it by saying, like, before we watched the movie, like coming into the movie. As I was watching the movie, I did see an interesting tactic or strategy that I think is pretty biblical, played out by the devil, who we would call Satan. And it was very much an appeal, because that's what Pennywise did, and it was kids, and it was appealing to the child with, like, that he appealed to what they wanted.
Mm-hmm.
Every time. He used their fear, or he used something that they want
to draw
them in. Synopsis. Do you want to take that, or do you want me?
Yeah, I got it. So I'll just read this. In the summer of 1989, a group of bullied kids band together to destroy a shape-shifting monster which disguises itself as a clown and preys on the children of Derry, their small Maine town, state of Maine. So, yeah, so that's just a quick, which we've kind of already talked about it just in what we've mentioned about the movie so far. But so the movie opens up. You have Georgie and you have Bill. Georgie is this young kid who wants to go outside in the rain, and Bill is his older brother who doesn't want to play with him, basically, and says he's been sick all day. I'm dying. Did you see what I was throwing up? And then they make a little boat. Would you call that origami? Is that like an origami boat? Yeah, like folding out of paper. And then Georgie excitedly runs outside, puts it in the drain, like where the water's draining, and watches the boat fly and chases it. And then the boat goes down the storm drain, right? And Georgie's kind of just standing there looking like, oh no, Bill's going to be so mad at me. I lost the boat. And
Georgie?
And then there you go. Exactly. Right there. That's where Pennywise appears. And then there's that interchange in what you said. He shows Georgie the boat. This is what you want. Right? This is A child who is all alone, isolated from those who are to protect them, and here's your toy. Here's what you want, right? And that's what that gets Georgie's attention. And I mean, forget the fact. I mean, even if you are a 6-year-old kid or however old Georgie is, he's young, he's little, and there's a clown in the sewer drain. I don't know that. And he says, "Hey, here's your boat." I don't know that that's going to draw you in and cause you to have a conversation with it.
I would hope. Yeah, I would hope the stranger danger thing would kick in. And
yeah, maybe that kicks in a little bit there.
blow the whistle and run back to mom and dad or something. And what parent lets their 6-year-old go like hauling down the street with a boat in the rain?
Well, I mean, you got to remember.
Oh, I guess you're right. I wasn't thinking about
the 80s.
You're right.
So the movie's taking place in 1989, but the book was actually written to show you. So the first half of Stephen King's book, I found this out afterwards, is set in like 1957. So if you're thinking like, and so that's when this whole, and I think it's basically the same beats are all throughout the story. So the only difference is the movie's 1989 starts in 89, the book starts in 57. So if you think about 1957 and how safe people felt to go outside, like go play in the neighborhood, kids running around all over the place, on the streets in like the suburbs and everything. So I don't think it would have been unusual for, and again, I don't know how Georgie was for a 6, 7, 8-year-old kid just to be running around playing outside. So, but I don't know. Even if I'm 6 years old and see a clown in the storm drain, I'm not going closer. That's for sure. I'm not even if he has my boat, I don't care about the boat enough to go check out the clown in the storm drain and have a conversation with him. But so Pennywise, spoilers, Pennywise first takes off Georgie's arm, right? And that's kind of the first big bloody mess in the movie, and then takes Georgie and they go down the storm drain, and no one sees or hears from him again. And he's a missing child to go along with many other missing children from the town of Derry. So right there from the opening, what you just talked about is established. You have a child, weak, alone, and Pennywise offers up the thing that they want, the thing that they're looking for, and then uses that to lure the child in and take him while, 30 feet from the front porch of a different adult, right? Because they have that old lady who comes out onto the porch, looks and doesn't see Georgie there because he's like, I guess he's down on his hands and knees or whatever. Then she goes inside, and that's when Pennywise takes Georgie. So What do you think? What do you think of that opening scene? Or was there anything I missed also?
No, I think you got it all. I guess in terms of my opinion of the opening scene, I thought it was great. I thought it was filmed really well. I thought it was written really well.
Attention grabbing.
It was attention grabbing. I did not think that he was going to take the kid's arm off.
Yeah.
I didn't think that was going to I just thought he was going to suck him down the sewer, and then we were just left to assume that he was going to feed off of something. Yeah. Whether it was the kid's fear later, I was thinking that maybe that was a little obvious. Or there was going to be some twist later that we'd find out, but that's kind of what I thought. But then when he took the kid's arm off, it threw me for a loop a little bit.
And at this point, I still didn't have any idea that that Pennywise was supernatural.
Right.
So I'm kind of like, I think it was effective. It was a good opening scene, but I'm still sitting like when Georgie sees the clown in the storm drain. I've always seen that image from the movie of. Mm-hmm. Of Pennywise looking out the storm drain. I'm like, why is the clown in the storm drain?
How did he get in there?
Why? What? This doesn't make any sense. And so right up to the point where, he shifts into the monster and takes off Georgie's arm, I'm like, oh, okay, that's why, because this is actually a supernatural thing. But so I was really into it, into the opening scene. It's a really good attention grabber. And again, like you said, that is a theme, and I think it sets that theme up pretty beautifully, or at least that pattern of how Pennywise impacts the kids of that town. It sets that up. I think it sets it up wonderfully. Like it was really good.
Right. Cool. So then, obviously, key themes, ideas. We already mentioned one, where, you've got evil using what we want as a means to entice us to submit, I guess, is a way to say it. And then standing up to bullies and we all need community to overcome our trauma. Sorry, I had to look at the notes on that one. I couldn't remember.
Yeah.
And then you also put a note in here, I must find Georgie alone. Is there anything specific that you meant by that?
Talking about it from the perspective of Bill, because technically speaking, Bill is the protagonist. So Bill is Georgie's older brother, and he's the one. So he feels all kinds of guilt about Georgie being taken because he didn't want to go outside and play with Georgie. He wasn't actually sick. So he was kind of pretending to be sick, and he didn't want to go out and play with Georgie. His little brother was kind of a nuisance to him, and he just didn't want to, hang out with him. So he sent Georgie outside to play, and then he's taken, right? He's killed, and he's no longer there. So, but as far as Bill knows, and as far as everyone in the town knows, none of the kids who are taken are dead. They don't know that, right? They don't know if the kids are dead or if they're just missing. So they're living with this reality of, at least in terms for Bill, he's living, Georgie was taken because of me. It is my fault that Georgie's taken. And there's a scene in the garage where Bill's dad comes home, and Bill has built a map of all of the sewers. And he's talking to his dad about how they might be able to find Georgie with the sewers. And then his dad tells him, no, we've been over this before. We're done with this. And then he's told to clean it all up and forget all about all of it. So in that, he's trying his best to make up for what he's done wrong and find his little brother. But he's telling himself now, and it's been reinforced, that he has to do it alone.
Right.
But then what he finds throughout the movie is that Pennywise will prey on children if they're alone. Therefore, he needs all of his friends to stick together with him in order to actually overcome this evil, right? Overcome his pain, overcome his struggle and his trauma. So that seems to be a theme too, that this group of people, the Losers Club, has to come together in order to actually overcome and defeat their enemy, the thing haunting Derry.
I guess that's the intro. That's setting the stage for our conversation. So now we're going to shift into the way we're going to pull out of the movie, biblically speaking.
Yeah.
So, if you are enjoying this so far, if you're enjoying the content so far, go ahead and hit the like button, the subscribe button for us. Content so far, go ahead and hit the like button, the subscribe button for us. Go ahead and share this episode if you wouldn't mind. Share it to somebody that likes horror movies, is a fan of Halloween. Maybe you know somebody that likes the movie It. Share it to them. And we want to hear you guys in the comment section. So we want to hear if you agree with us, if you disagree with us, and we'll try to comment back and reply to your comments as best we can, and maybe we can get a good discussion going in the comment section. So go ahead and do all the social media stuff. And Nick, do you want to start with your first observation?
Yeah. So the biggest observation, or the biggest thing that I can see, is, so Pennywise in the movie is this haunting presence over this town of Derry, and really haunts the weakest among them more than anything else, and more than anyone else. So the children of this community are the ones who are haunted. And in a lot of ways, while the adults stand idly by, those who might have more means to stand up to Pennywise, or the ability to actually protect and serve their children, kind of stand idly by and just let this stuff happen. But if you look at Pennywise, and then its presence and impact and, say, influence over everyone in the town of Derry, especially all of the kids directly that is haunting. To me, it's Pennywise. You can look at that and extrapolate that Pennywise is essentially the way they experience Pennywise is how we experience sin. Sin is a ruling, dominating, haunting presence over every single person who has ever lived in the history of the world. So the story of it is that we must stand up to this master, to this bully who is more powerful, bigger, stronger than us, but we must stand up to it, or the way that the Bible kind of talks about that is we must rule over it. So standing up to our sin, if you read there's been a couple of movies where this has come up, but if you read the story of Cain and Abel in Genesis chapter 4, so the whole story is this debilitated, this relationship that has gone sour between two brothers, Cain and Abel. Abel brought offerings to the Lord that God accepted, and Cain brought some substandard offerings to the Lord that God did not accept. And rather than seeing the fallenness in himself, Cain then becomes jealous, envious, and angry with his brother over the fact that that God had accepted Abel's sacrifice and not Cain's. So it says this, and I'm just going to read some various verses throughout Genesis chapter 4. So this is verse 5, about halfway through. So Cain was very angry, and his face fell. Okay, so just to give you an idea of how Cain was angry, and Cain was in his sin. And the Lord said to Cain, this is verse 6, "Why are you angry, and why has your face fallen? If you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well," so this is the really big part of the verse, "sin is crouching at the door. Its desire is for you, but you must rule over it." So here's Cain in this state where all he can think about is his anger. All he can think about is his wanting to get even though his brother did nothing wrong. He wants to be regarded as equal to his brother, and he sees no other way to do that but then to rise up in anger and confront his brother. But before he ever gets to that point, he's stuck in this haunting presence. His anger and his sin is a haunting presence, causing him to not think correctly, causing him to be completely out of his mind, essentially, just as Pennywise does in the movie. But then God meets with Cain and gives him a warning and says, sin, this thing that is causing this to come up in you, this thing that you are enslaved to, is crouching at the door, and its desire is for you. So some translations will say contrary to you. But what I see that as saying is that sin's desire is to dominate you, to overtake you, to consume you, to completely control you. And you can see that in Pennywise in the kids that he haunts over. His desire is to have domination. He is a bully in the truest sense of the word, just as sin is. His desire is to completely dominate and rule over every aspect of our lives. And God warns...
Another way to say that would be sin's desire is to consume us.
Absolutely.
And what does Pennywise do?
Yep.
He consumes the children.
He consumes them. Yeah, that's exactly. That's and so then God warns Cain that here's your chance. Here's your instruction. You can listen to me and you can heed it, or you cannot. He tells Cain, you must rule over it. And that right there in and of itself is the story of It, the movie It. They have to figure out in community with one another how to rule over this haunting creature that's causing havoc and chaos in all their lives, that's causing them trauma and grief and all these various things, kidnapping children and consuming them. Like you just said, the Losers Club has to figure out, how do they rule over this bully, this slave master that is subjugating them to whatever it wants. And it just creates chaos. And they have to figure out how to rule over it. But where the movie goes is, the movie is kind of saying that if you just come together, you can defeat this evil. If you just band together, you can bully the bully, right? And you can do that. But that jumps the gun, because that's a worldview. To say that we can just band together to defeat evil forgets that evil has actually already consumed and overtaken us on an individual level. So even if we band together, there's still that sin that lives within each and every person that's dominating and controlling everything they do. That's the doctrine of total depravity, that even if things aren't as bad as they could be, we have no hope to make them better in and of ourselves. We have no ability to make ourselves good and acceptable and moral and righteous and all of those things. And so we're a slave to sin, as Romans puts it.
So yeah, and in another terms, for the movie, talking about the movie, where the movie goes, at the very end, when Bill stands up and says, "I'm no longer afraid," the parallel would be, Bill doesn't have the power to be not afraid by himself, in and of himself. That would be the parallel.
Yeah, because
he would need another source. He would need another source, a supernatural source, equal to or greater than the supernatural power that Pennywise has, in order that he could lean on, in order for him to not be afraid.
Yeah, and that's absolutely right, because this is where the secular worldview of the people who wrote this film really shines through, and that's that the strength to defeat evil exists within you, right? It exists within you and the people that you love. If you muster it up within yourself, all of you together can stand up to the bully. And chapter 2 is exactly the same way. I mean, in my opinion, it kind of just follows the exact same story, but they have to, again, band together, muster up the strength to confront their fear of Pennywise and then defeat him. But in the real world, in our condition, we don't even have the ability to do that.
No. And I do like the way you worded that, though, because you kind of got me thinking now. I like the way you worded that, where it jumps the gun. Because if we're going to be clear, we're not saying that community there's no place for it, or it's not good enough, or it's maybe not. What am I trying to say? There's no place for community. Let's go with that. What we're not saying is there's no place for community. So I like how you say it jumps the gun, because it's almost like the fragments are there in the movie, but it's missing a logical support system for them to overcome something that's more powerful than them.
Yeah. And so when we look at it from a Christian perspective, it's obvious where that comes from. And that's from the fact that in our hopelessness, God sent his son to provide us hope. God sent his son to give us strength. God sent his son to do what we absolutely can't do to defeat sin. He sent his son to live perfectly righteous, to die an atoning death, to pay for our own penalty, and then raising from the dead to defeat death once and for all, promising eternal life to anyone who will place faith in him. And in doing so, he provides the strength and ability to overcome the evil that is haunting us, that is dominating us, that is consuming us, and we can actually do what Cain couldn't now, and we can rule over it. And not only can we do that individually, but like you said before, it's jumping it. The movie It gets it out of order. Now that we have that within us, that has been placed within us by God, that strength and ability, now we can come together as encouragement, as even further building of strength with one another to overcome that evil that lives within us, and to live in community with one another. James 5:16 tells us to confess our sins to one another, right? To build each other up. There's so many verses that we could get into that talks about community and the necessity of being in community with one another, being in fellowship with one another. Another passage that comes to mind would be 1 John chapter 1, when it talks about so that our joy might be complete. The fellowship that we have is with the Father, and with the Son, and with each other. So just all those things, then all of that now works together to help us defeat, kill, and overcome our ultimate enemy, which is evil, that haunting presence that causes so much chaos in our lives. So that's the biggest parallel that I see with it in chapter 1 and chapter 2.
Yeah, one of the things that I thought was really interesting is how the group bonds.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought there was a really good parallel between that and the Christian church. Because any true believing Christian would be right at the front lines saying, I'm a sinner. I am guilty of sin. And the only difference that I have from the unbeliever is that I have submitted to Christ and Scripture, and they haven't. That would be the only difference. So when you have that understanding, and then you find other people that have that same understanding, you tend to bond over your own struggles. So the sin, not the acts of sin, but the struggle and the battlefield of, not sinning anymore and having a heart of humility in order to avoid sin and live a righteous life by faith, I think is a very interesting way to look at the losers club.
Mm-hmm.
Because what do they bond over? They bond over their trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And if we equate sin to trauma, I think that's an interesting parallel. So the openness of a Christian circle, no differently than the openness of the losers club, they were right in each other's lives, with parents who were sexually abusing one of the kids, beating one of the kids, keeping, what was the mom who was keeping her kid indoors? She was more of like a hypochondriac or whatever. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Are you still there?
I'm here. Did you hear any of that?
Okay. No, I stopped here. You froze at you had just mentioned bonding over trauma, and then you said the losers club, and then you froze.
Okay, I lost your video like 3 minutes ago.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I don't see you. And it's saying that you have a Wi-Fi issue.
I haven't lost connection.
I mean, it still says we're uploading, but we can go right back into it, and I don't really need to see you.
Okay.
Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So I was just talking about the Losers Club and how there's a parallel between the Christian community and the Losers Club bonding over their trauma and bonding over their struggles. And I think that's super interesting, because you have the Christian community where, not necessarily bonding over doing sin, but bonding over the struggle of living that righteous life through faith is very similar to the Losers Club, where they had abusive parents. They had one parent who was like a hypochondriac and wouldn't let the kid out of the house, something to that degree. You had Bill, his parents, after losing Georgie, a great loss, didn't really give him the attention that he really needed. And there was, disjointed family dynamics there. So I just thought that was really interesting. And I kind of drew a parallel to the church from the Losers Club, and how it wasn't necessarily like a drama fest in their lives. It, sometimes life groups and Bible studies can get that way, where it's just a dumping fest of problems. And it wasn't like that. It was more like, hey, we're coming together because we all struggle with something, and we're unified together by our flaws and our traumas and our enemies. And most of all, the biggest enemy, which is the monster that's trying to consume us, that no other adult or anybody else will help us find, or believes us to exist or whatever.
Yep.
So I don't know. I don't really have any scripture for that. I thought that was an interesting.
Yeah.
Line
you could
draw.
I think you could even make a really easy parallel and say that the church really is just a losers club, right? The church is just a club of losers, right? I mean, it's kind of the same thing.
Right, absolutely.
Bullied, beaten down people, weak in a lot of ways, that have come together and are stronger because they're together than they were wherever apart. Yeah, that's absolutely true.
For sure. Anything else you got, or you want to?
I think we can wrap that up. I mean, I'm sure. I mean, there's so much that I feel like I could talk about, but I think let's
I wrote some other stuff down here.
Okay, go for it.
So, and these are just really short, so it's not super in depth, but we can talk about this and then get your opinions. So, the parallel of Bill finding Georgie. Can you remind me what you said at the beginning, where you said almost like it was a negative thing, where he wanted to find Georgie alone?
Yeah, not necessarily that he wanted to, but he thought he thought he had to. Like, I have.
So I took that a different way.
Okay.
I took that a different way. So you were saying like it's my fault, like your position, the way you received that character was it's my fault that he's gone, and when no one knows that he's dead, I have to find him because I have the responsibility. I think that's a fair take. Or just the guilt, right? I took it as he's my brother. I need to go save him.
Okay.
So I took it from like more of an evangelical position where sin is consuming every day all of these people who don't know Christ. And we need to have the same tenacity that Bill does when he's trying to find Georgie when we look at our outreach.
Yeah.
That's the way I took it. That same intensity of, I am going to forsake my parents. I'm going to be disobedient. I'm going to find my brother because I don't want him essentially to die. Now I'm not advocating for more sin or anything like that. I'm just saying that intensity is what the character portrayed, where he's like, I'm building models in my garage and stealing my dad's stuff to do this. And like, he was trying to find his brother.
Yeah. And we should persist
and
even when we're told to stop.
Right. There you go. Love it. So that's it. That's all I got. I just wanted to say that last thing. I thought that was super, super fun. Now, I will say that I thought the movie was boring, but for a movie review and what we do with movies, I thought it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. It's amazing how much even the worst, like most awful movies, like not that this is in that level of category, but like can become fun when you start to watch them in kind of this way, when you start to watch them well.
Watch well.
Yeah.
That's right. Cool, guys. So that's been it. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. Again, like, subscribe, share the content. Give us your opinions. If you want to create shorts, if you want to use our content to give your opinion on your own channels, just do us a favor and tag us so that we can see your videos and the content that you make off of it, and we can respond and light up the comment section. We want to see you guys down there, and good, healthy, wholesome, kind-spirited discussions. So again, we're the WatchWell Podcast. This has been it. We thank you for joining us, and remember, if you're gonna watch well. We'll see you in the next one.